By Thursday afternoon, Karen had achieved something approaching local fame. Channel 7 had indeed sent a news crew, though not for the reasons she'd expected. The story that aired wasn't environmental disaster rocks suburban community. It was Hawaii president calls EPA over pool repair. Karen watched the broadcast from her living room, her coffee growing cold, as the reporter interviewed bemused neighbors who seemed more concerned about Karen's behavior than Tom's pool maintenance. The environmental inspector who'd responded to her EPA complaint appeared on camera explaining that pool draining for legitimate repairs poses no environmental threat and requires no special permits. Worse, Tom Henderson had started a neighborhood group chat specifically to share updates about his pool repair process, complete with photos of the new liner installation and jokes about environmental terrorism. Karen watched her phone buzz with neighbors joining the group, neighbors who used to seek her approval for everything from fence heights to mailbox colors. The doorbell rang, interrupting her spiral of indignation. Sarah Henderson stood on her porch holding a plate of homemade cookies and wearing the kind of smile that suggested she'd won something. "I wanted to thank you," Sarah said sweetly. Karen's eyes narrowed. "Thank me? For bringing so much attention to our pool situation. 3 neighbors have asked for our pool company's contact information. Apparently, your EPA complaint made everyone realize they should get their pools properly inspected." Karen accepted the cookies with the expression of someone being handed a live grenade. "I was protecting the community." "Oh, you definitely protected something," Sarah agreed. "Tom's so grateful for all the free publicity that he's thinking of running for HOA board next year. Turns out a lot of people in the neighborhood think we need leadership that focuses on actual community issues instead of, well, whatever this was." The implication hung in the air like chlorine fumes. Karen had spent 3 years building her reputation as the neighborhood's guardian of standards, and in 1 week, she'd managed to position herself as the villain in her own story. "The pool's refilled, by the way," Sarah continued cheerfully. "Liner's perfect, chemical balance is excellent, and the inspector said everything looks fantastic. We're thinking of having a neighborhood pool party this weekend to celebrate." Karen watched Sarah walk back across the street, her mind racing. The HOA board election was only 6 months away. She'd been running unopposed for 3 consecutive terms, but now Tom Henderson was considering a challenge. She looked down at the cookies, then at her phone buzzing with notifications from the group chat she hadn't been invited to join. Through her front window, she could see neighbors gathering around Tom's beautifully restored pool, laughing and chatting in the late afternoon sun. For the first time in her tenure as board president, Karen Whitfield felt something she'd never experienced before: doubt. Not about whether she'd been right, she was always right, but about whether being right was enough anymore. She bit into one of Sarah's cookies. It was, she had to admit, perfectly baked, which somehow made everything worse. Karen Whitfield's morning jog came to an abrupt halt when she spotted the gaping concrete crater where the Hendersons' pool used to be. Her Nike running shoes skidded against the sidewalk as she stared in horror at the empty basin, its white walls gleaming like exposed bones in the morning sun. "What in God's name?" she whispered, clutching her phone with trembling fingers. The pool deck was still wet, dark stains spreading across the concrete like evidence of some terrible crime. Garden hoses snaked across the yard, leading to storm drains that were probably still gurgling with chlorinated water. Karen's mind raced through the Willowbrook HOA handbook. Surely this violated at least 17 different regulations. "Mike," she called to her husband through their kitchen window. "Call the police. The Hendersons have committed environmental terrorism." Mike's muffled response suggested he thought she was overreacting, but Karen was already marching across the street. Her HOA board president badge, which she wore even while jogging, caught the sunlight as she stepped onto the Henderson property with the authority of someone who'd spent 3 years perfecting the art of righteous indignation. Tom Henderson emerged from his garage wearing work clothes and a guilty expression that confirmed Karen's worst suspicions. "Mr. Henderson," she announced, her voice carrying across the neighborhood with the precision of a bullhorn. Do you have any idea what you've done? Tom wiped his hands on a rack, avoiding eye contact. Look, Karen, I know how this looks, but this looks like a man who's destroyed property values for the entire street. Karen's voice climbed an octave. Do you realize that pools require permits to drain? That there are environmental protocols? That the HOA specifically requires written approval for any modification to landscaping features? It's not landscaping, it's a pool repair, Tom said weakly. A repair that involves completely emptying a 12,000-gallon pool overnight. Karen pulled out her phone, fingers flying across the screen. I'm documenting everything. The water damage to the street, the potential foundation issues, the clear violation of municipal drainage codes. Tom's wife, Sarah, appeared at the front door, coffee mug in hand, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. Karen, we had a minor emergency, the pool company said. I don't want to hear excuses. Karen snapped, taking photos from every angle. I want to see permits. I want to see approval forms. I want to see some evidence that you people understand you can't just make unilateral decisions in a planned community. The irony wasn't lost on Tom that Karen had painted her fence purple last month without asking anyone. But he knew better than to bring that up now. We'll have it refilled by tomorrow, Sarah offered. Karen's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. Oh, you think this is about timeline? This is about respect. This is about community standards. This is about people who think rules don't apply to them. She was already dialing 911 as she stalked back across the street, her morning jog forgotten in favor of a much more satisfying form of exercise, enforcement. 2 hours later, Karen stood triumphantly beside Officer Martinez as he examined the empty pool with the expression of a man who'd been called to investigate a missing lawn ornament and found himself staring at the Grand Canyon. Ma'am, Officer Martinez said carefully, I'm not entirely sure what crime you believe has been committed here. Karen's perfectly manicured finger jabbed toward the concrete crater. Environmental destruction. Property damage. Violation of municipal codes. Possibly terrorism. Terrorism. The officer's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. Economic terrorism, Karen clarified, as if this made perfect sense. Do you know what an empty pool does to property values? This man has single-handedly damaged every home value in a 3-block radius. Tom Henderson had been watching from his kitchen window, but now he stepped outside with the weary determination of a man who'd been married long enough to recognize when a situation required adult intervention. Officer, I called the pool company yesterday about a tear in our liner. They said we needed to drain it immediately or we'd have structural damage. I have the work order right here. Karen intercepted the paperwork before Officer Martinez could reach for it. Convenient. I'm sure these documents are completely legitimate and not something you printed off the internet this morning. Karen. Tom's voice carried a warning edge that made his wife peek out from behind the curtains. You need to stop this. I need to stop this. Karen's voice reached a pitch that made neighborhood dogs start howling. I need to stop protecting our community from people who think they can just anarchist pool drainage. Officer Martinez rubbed his temples. In 12 years of police work, he'd dealt with domestic disputes, bar fights, and stolen bicycles. But this was his first case of what appeared to be aggressive pool policing. Here's what's going to happen, he announced with the authority of someone who'd reached his limit. Mr. Henderson, your paperwork looks legitimate. You're allowed to drain your own pool for repairs. Mrs. Whitfield, Ward President Whitfield. Mrs. Whitfield, being president of your HOA doesn't give you authority to call police about pool maintenance. Karen's face flushed crimson. Are you telling me that property destruction is legal as long as you have a piece of paper? I'm telling you that draining a pool for legitimate repairs isn't property destruction. But Karen wasn't finished. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling through her contacts with the manic energy of someone who'd just discovered a new crusade. Fine. If local law enforcement won't protect our community, I'll call the EPA and the County Health Department and Channel 7 News. Tom and Officer Martinez exchanged a look that communicated an entire conversation about the particular challenges of dealing with people who turn neighborhood oversight into a full-contact sport. Channel 7? Tom couldn't help himself. For a pool repair. For environmental destruction disguised as pool repair. Karen shot back, already dialing. Mark my words, Tom Henderson. This isn't over, not by a long shot. As she marched back toward her house, phone pressed to her ear, her voice carried across the neighborhood. Yes, hello. This is Board President Whitfield reporting illegal dumping in Willowbrook. Officer Martinez tipped his hat to Tom and walked back to his patrol car, making a mental note to take the long way around this particular street for the rest of the week.